Hey, this is prose poet Riya. Used to be a K-pop fan during second gen. I'm coming back from a 45-minute break after listening to Love Song by deok-jil. The moment I heard the opening verse, I asked, did Kim Namjoon write this? And the more I listened, the more convinced I became. And it turns out that Kim Namjoon did write Love Song, which is apparently general K-pop knowledge, but my K-pop knowledge stopped right at the start of third gen. I left the industry at that point and moved to England, so I didn't know. Apparently, he goes by the name RM instead of Rap Monster now. I'll try to remember that. Anyways, during my reaction, I mentioned some philosophical theories that came up, including Kierkegaard and the death drive. So let's do a quick comparative analysis of the two songs. Firstly, Love Song has the same death-driven sentiment in the attitude towards love as the song Run by Bangtan, and this can be explained through three philosophical theories underpinning the lyricisms of the two songs. 1. Freud's theory of the death drive. 2. Kierkegaard's concept of despair in sickness unto death. And 3. Heideggerian existential angst, which arises from the state called Offenheit. Let's unpack this. So Love Song and Run have an all-or-nothing mentality that is at once self-aware and blindsided to the speaker's own notion of love. Love Song showcases this through gaming analogy and computer binary code and mixed metaphors, whereas Run showcases this through plant analogy in the opening verse and repetition compulsion in the chorus, and this gives rise to a death-driven attitude towards love. Sigmund Freud's theory of the death drive proposes that there is a universal force within us that opposes our instinct to live, and it drives a desire for destruction, aggression, and a return to an animate state, to death. The conflict between life and death is argued to shape human behavior, emotions, and personality, and the death drive can be expressed in self-destructive tendencies. This is linked to repetition compulsion, which is the human tendency to repeat past traumas or distressing experiences, habituating behaviors that are perhaps toxic to our well-being, as a way of attempting to master or understand them, or to, become desensitized to them. This can be seen quite clearly in Run with the refrain of the word run. Despite the speaker's feet being ripped apart and he's getting hurt, he says, just keep going. Compared to this, the death drive in Love Song is just a little bit more kayo, more mainstream, simplified, then dramatized to fit the thematic polarization. And it's all about the flippancy in the extreme. In Love Song, it's very either or. There's never an in-between. It's either I give you my everything or it's nothing. Right? Either I have all of you or nothing. And also it talks in computing binary code at the beginning. That's a very strong setup. 1 or 0, yes or no, and that's it. Yeah, so it's very polarized and clear cut. And this unique flippancy expands into the territory of Heideggerian ontology because there's a lot of angst. And angst, as it was first coined by Heidegger, is tied to our Offenheit state of being thrown into existence without our consent and made to suffer due to restrictive situational factors beyond our control that bleeds us dry of our selfhood and passions. What does this mean? Basically, the sentiment I didn't ask to be born. That's what thrownness is. That's what Offenheit is. This condition gives rise to angst, a profound mood that emerges from the self-awareness of our thrownness and helplessness as we go through life. So in Run, evidence of this can be seen in Yoongi's lines in the second verse, where he says everything is useless because a dream has been broken. The refrain of the word dream also points to the repetition compulsion that we discussed earlier. It's about wallowing in the echo of failure. So he says, he keeps running but not getting anywhere, and the world might as well just burn him out, right? It's very flippant. And in Love Song, you can see this in the chorus. So the speaker says, he's full of problems, he's sick with love, 길이 없어서, right? They've hit a dead end, 죽어도 좋아서, right? But here, because it's written in the past tense, there is a sense of heightened self-awareness and a retrospective sense of empowerment in the denouncement of the infinite and the good. Kierkegaard is a Christian philosopher, but his idea of Christianity is very interestingly Buddhist, I would argue. So in his Sickness unto Death, he explores despair as a profound spiritual sickness. It is believed that the moment we are born, we are in despair, even if we're not aware of it. And the two main types of despair, according to Kierkegaard, are despair of having, of seeking fulfillment in finite things that fail to satisfy us ultimately, and despair of not having, of rejecting the infinite and the good. The only way we can prevent such despair from destroying us, according to Kierkegaard, is to become self-aware that we are sick. with despair. And only then can we work to break free of it by confronting the truth about ourselves, which will lead to a genuine relationship with the world and finding meaning in life. But in the lyrics, this doesn't happen. So the speaker is self-aware of his sickness, of his despair. However, instead of wishing to break free, he basically chooses the path that ultimately lead to self-destruction. So let's take a look at the opening verse. This is the opening verse of Run. I'll hopefully put something up here. So this is the opening verse of Run, and this is the opening verse of Love Song. So in Run, it goes 너는 하나뿐인 태양, 세상에 딱 하나. And in Love Song, 이제의 세계 속 I know you're my one and only, right? You're my son, one and only in this world of zero. You're my one and only. This wasn't the only reason I thought that Kim Namjoon wrote the song, but it did prime me to keep a lookout for the other things. As a prose poet, I know that we writers often, recycle strong openings, which is harder to do en masse when it's just, words on the page translated into the same language. But playing with languages is a feature of, polyglot poets, Kim Namjoon being one of them. So in Run, the speaker is self-aware that the sun is killing him, but he still reaches for it. And he says, 너무 늦었어. It's too late, I can't live without you. Even, if the sun's parching him, he still tries to reach for it. So there's, a level of self-awareness there. Even though it's bad for him, he keeps wanting it more, like it's a drug. And once again, that points to Freud's repetition compulsion, the toxic behavior that we kind of habituate. Just like the love song speaker who already kind of denounced the infinite and the good through auto-objectification, he says heaven probably doesn't suit him. A footnote that this can be read in multiple ways, and one of which is a queer reading through a religious studies framework. But we won't do this today because we're working on another argument here. So the speaker in Love Song seeks complete immersion in their love, even if it leads to pain and a profane death. 죽어도 좋았어. I probably won't go to heaven. It's all or nothing. I want every part of you. I'll give you my everything until the end of the universe. Please use me like a drug. It could have been like anything, but the lyricist chose the word drug to liken the speaker to, something that will destroy his love while simultaneously objectifying himself. Objectification is a form of desecration, right? It's to look at a person and see them as a product, to be used and thrown away, to be dissected into pieces. It's to look at them and to think that it's completely fine, morally and ethically fine, not to treat them as a human being. That's what objectification essentially boiled down to. And the speaker in Love Song is pleading to be desecrated and dehumanized in that way. This death-driven dramatization furthers the argument posited in Run. Run describes the speaker making sense of how he may live on while carrying feelings of insignificance, helplessness, and despair. He runs into a wall and just keeps banging his head against it, right? That's essentially what's happening, I would argue. But here, in Love Song, the speaker has learned to weaponize the thing that's destroying him, and he's found empowerment in the profane. Use me, he says. It's all or nothing. The pit that you just dragged me out of, let's fall back in it together because baby, if it's with you, even hell will look like paradise. That's obviously not the lyrics, but I'm just making words up as I do as a poet in order to paint a picture so that you can see what's going on in my head, and hopefully you are able to see now why I said what I said about the similarities between Run and Love Song, and why the opening verse made me wonder if Kim Namjoon wrote Love Song. But all in all, I would argue that these expressions of love's destructive power and the act of finding empowerment through despair contribute to a nuanced portrayal of human emotions. By employing different analogies and metaphors, the songs posit a self-awareness in the willingness to embrace one's destructive emotions and the denouncement of the infinite and the good. In conclusion, effective close reading allows us to make these cool intertextual links between different texts and identify and recognize the author's fingerprints through shared philosophical underpinnings. And in this case, the author or the lyricist is Kim Namjoon.